Hello everybody. I wanted to make a video this time about agape love, and I don't think I can get any further in the discussion of love without, or agape, without bringing up the subject of consciousness. It's an area that I've been interested in for many years, since my teen years really, and I still study a lot about it. It was my first major in college before I switched to graphic arts, and it's still something I read a lot about all the time. I don't think I can really talk about consciousness without talking about this book, The Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. Kind of a long title. It's by Julian Jaynes. There's Mr. Jaynes right there. He's passed on now, but it's a book that I've read probably a dozen times or more, and I constantly refer back to it because it's the most clear, concise, interesting book on the subject about not only consciousness but really about the whole idea of God, where the idea of God comes from, how it came to be, and how we still to this day talk about it, think about it, use the concept in our daily lives. And basically the premise of the book is that what makes it so clear and understandable is that it puts consciousness into a timeline. It gives it historical perspective. It says that he says about 3,000 to 4,000 years ago we went through a phase change, and before we became fully conscious as we are now, we had like a pre-consciousness or a proto-consciousness, and that in that state we basically talked to God all the time, just like me talking to you or you talking to me, anyone talking to each other. We would constantly be talking to God. Of course, nowadays people who do this and are noisy about it generally get put away, but we call them schizophrenics, but back then it was just normal. It was just every day. It was how you survived. I mean, he gives an example of, like, if you're out hunting for a day or so and you get lost and you don't know where your village is, you say, how do I get home, God? And God would say, something, well, you go over this hill, around the bend, you'll find a river, you follow the river. There's just stuff like that, and it was just a survival tool to think about God. So I think that's relevant to our discussion of God nowadays, is to think about where the concept of God came from, and why the Bible is such an important book in our understanding of the concept of God. It was written about the same time as Julian Jaynes talks about as being when we went from being pre-conscious to conscious, and it was written right about that same time. He doesn't really talk about the Bible as much as the Iliad and the Odyssey. He talks about the Iliad was pre-consciousness and the Odyssey is post-consciousness, and the differences between the two. There's so much in that book. I'd highly recommend it to anyone. It's by far the best book I've ever read on the subject, and I've read just about everything I get my hands on, really, at Chalmers and Dennett and Dawkins and you name it. I mean, but the one that sheds the most light on the subject is really Jaynes, and it's the only book he ever wrote, excuse me, and he packs his whole life energy into the book, and it's a doozy of a book. Okay, so how does that relate to Agape Consciousness? The way that I would relate it would be that we come to an understanding of love and God in the present day from our conversations with other people, with the study of the Bible, and where we're at right now is, it's an ongoing evolution that we really are seeing in YouTube debates. Our understanding is constantly evolving, and I think that's what's so interesting about YouTube, is that it brings new awareness. And I just wanted to talk about Agape because it's kind of like the part of the series of my other discussions of love, of Philos and God is love and all that. And I think first of all I'd like to say that I really appreciate religious people, I think, more than atheists, because they are generally more down to earth and clear and reasonable people, but yet there's an awful lot of misunderstanding, I think, in the religion. I grew up in a religious home. We went to church 3 times a week, and we'd go to revivals, where we'd go every night of the week for a week or even 2 weeks, and so I was just raised in that whole environment. And I've read the Bible a lot, but it's a 2,000-year-old book, the most recent, and I think it's time for an update. Not that I would change the Bible. I think we need to leave the Bible as it is, but we need to put it in historical perspective. The important thing, I think, about Jain's work is how he talks about God. We used to just talk to God all the time, and that's some people still do, but what happened was, about 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, we started losing the voices. They started fading away, and this was mostly with the advent of writing and speech and more developed social interaction. We didn't have as much time to think about God, and God came to us slowly. You couldn't rush God, where social interaction demands that you make decisions quickly. And so God kept being put farther and farther into the background, and yet he's so important, so integral to our existence, that he's never really diminished. And we have churches and religions now more than ever, and I think it's important that we do. But we also have to realize, how it came to be like it is, and we have to, I think, put religion in perspective. Like eventually we came to understand that the church and the state ought to be separate, and now we're going, believe it or not, still through a process where we're, as many people